Good morning, everyone. My name is Nicole Augustine, and I am the PFS Grant Cultural Liaison. I do apologize that I could not be there with you this morning, but I am grateful for technology and the ability to join you electronically. So, PFS stands for Partnerships for Success Grant, and this grant was awarded to the state of North Carolina to assist us in addressing the prescription medication misuse problem. Gaston County is one of 13 counties that received this grant, and a part of the grant has dollars set aside for cultural competency training, which is where I come into play. So what I'm going to be doing this morning is just providing a very short presentation on what I'm able to provide you as a result of this grant. I will talk a little bit about cultural competency, what it is, why the training is important, and give you a sense of what are the things I talk about in a typical training. So I'll speak about the cultural influences on substance use, culture and language, and just end with a conversation about the resource that I can provide to you and the fact that it's free to your organization from now until September 30th. So what is cultural competency? Now, I can imagine this is a term you've heard many times and probably have sat through a few trainings on it. But cultural competency is our ability to interact effectively with people from different cultures. But what do we mean when we say interact effectively? And this really boils down to the ability to be respectful and responsive to folks from different health beliefs and practices. And as prevention providers and folks in the community, we're frequently interacting with community members who may have health beliefs and practices that differ from ours. But a part of being cultural competent is being able to take that information and utilize it for the good, finding ways to integrate their health beliefs and practices into the implementation of strategies, and being respectful in the event that you're unable to. One of the things you have to talk about when you talk about cultural competency is actual culture. And what I find is often we have dwindled the concept of culture down just to be talking about things like race and ethnicity. But culture is so much broader than that. It includes gender, socioeconomic status, language, sexual orientation, religion, even geographic location. Now, when we're talking about substance misuse prevention, we're specifically interested in how culture influences substance use practices. And so where I like to start the conversation is getting people to reflect internally and to think about what do they remember about their own family's cultural approach to substance use. So I encourage you, even right now, to think about what were the messages you received as a child as it relates to alcohol, marijuana, tobacco, prescription drugs, or even illicit substances. And think about what messages did you receive and what messages did you not receive. And I think it's a great starting point for understanding the fact that culture begins from very, very young and it starts in the home. And that experience sticks with us throughout life and can set the norms for what we believe is okay and not okay. The other thing I like to talk about in my trainings is understanding how culture and the culture of stigma influences language, and that sometimes we can limit our ability to connect with our community audience by the language we use. And I'll give you an example. The word abuse. If you take just a moment and think about what comes to mind when you hear the word abuse. Often when I ask this question, either to community members or to youth, right, I get images of some of the extreme behaviors. People, drinking a whole lot, people missing work, hangovers, right, which is true that these are behaviors that happen underneath abuse. But abuse can start much sooner than this. People don't wake up drinking 10, 15 drinks, right? It starts slowly over time. And what happens is we are unable to reach folks with our prevention messages because they are thinking abuse and they're like, oh, that's further down the line. I'm nowhere near it. But the reality is The folks who were there started off very, very small. So a part of what I like to do is to talk about how can we shift our language to be more inclusive so that when folks are hearing our prevention messages, they actually see themselves and recognize that where they are currently in their use, they can still utilize prevention strategies. So I always use now words like misuse, harmful use, substance use disorder, and there's plenty of other words like addict we need to get rid of, right? Is another big one too that we use. So a part of what I like to do is just beginning to think about the culture of our community and our society and how it keeps stigma going and keeps prevention messages from being heard. Then midway through the training, we begin to start thinking about what is the culture of our community? And are there any community norms that make substance use and misuse easier to happen within our community? So I really like to think about what's happening at home, because what I find is that every community has a different culture. And there are definitely some community cultures that perpetuate substance misuse. And so a part of the training gives an opportunity for the coalition or the group to really evaluate that, because it begins to be a great starting point for intervention strategies. What are the cultural norms we need to work on and change so that our community is open to substance misuse prevention messages? And it's a really, really great way to start moving the training into what I call the implementation brainstorming phase. And this is at the later part of the training, but I like for folks to leave with something. And during this part of the training, I take the opportunity to reflect on what are the current implementation activities that you're doing, or what are you thinking or planning on doing? And based upon what we've talked about in the training, are there some modifications that need to be made? Maybe you have a whole set of prevention messages using language that perpetuates stigma. So maybe we need to change that. Maybe you have implementation strategies addressed to a specific target audience, but you haven't thought about their cultural response to that message. And maybe you need to do some pilot testing with the message before you blast it across the community. So I really like this part of the training because you're able to hear the content, take the content, and do something actionable with it. So hopefully this has given you a sense of the training that I can offer and the resources that I can offer. As I've said in the beginning of this short presentation, these services are currently free of charge to you from now until September 30th. So I look forward to the opportunity to consult with you, to provide a training with you. The training times can vary from as short as an hour to 2 hours. Depends on how much time the group has. But again, my name is Nicole Augustine. It's been a pleasure to bring this information to you this morning, and I hope to hear from you. I have left business cards, so please feel free to contact me by email or phone. Have a great day.